Why? Why do theists continue to say stupid things? Why do they not understand what atheism really is? Why do they think that some weird British circle existing is proof of a god? Find some sort of answers to those questions and a few more things in this instalment of Theists Say Stupid Things. Hello, I'm the Skeptic, the British floating circle that watches people make extraordinary claims and then I explain why I don't accept what they're saying. It doesn't take much for some people to blurt out random words and hope they stick, especially when it comes to the existence of gods and why atheism is stupid or a lie or not real or whatever. Here's another assortment of theists saying stupid things with something you may want to stick around for. Actual proof of Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe, leave be upon her. Theists Say Stupid Things is part of a bigger playlist which you can find in the description of this video. Although before we hear another bunch of silliness, if this isn't your first Skeptic video, hit the like, the subscribe and the bell, and perhaps that silly old algorithm can start getting our suggestions right. And a super thanks to those that hit super thanks in some recent videos. Megatron Jenkins and Nixie Chan. And a big thank you to new channel members who get access to a pretty awesome Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe and more hen emoji. Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe bestows leaves upon you all. More hen. Right, let's get started with a 24-second video about atheism being debunked in 20 seconds.
Here's the fastest way to debunk atheism. Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second greatest is to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, Jesus wouldn't have commanded us to love someone who doesn't exist, therefore atheism is false.
Hold up, a prophet wouldn't tell folks to worship something that didn't exist? Does that then mean all the other gods that have people saying you must follow this god, and they obviously wouldn't say it if the god didn't exist, suddenly exists? I wouldn't say that people should follow a giant cosmic rainbow deity if that deity didn't exist. And of course, Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe, leaf be upon her, can only survive by eating other gods, thus making your god non-existent if she did exist. Man, that was easy.
This argument is perfectly valid and philosophically sound. It cannot be refuted by anybody. And if you want to learn more about this argument, then watch this video I have on YouTube.
I mean, I feel like I did just give you a valid alternative, using your own rules. So, sorry, messenger man, but that doesn't work. Next.
Well, the Freedom from Religion Foundation is a Wisconsin-based gang of atheists and agnostics, very nasty people.
It can't just be me that this annoys. But why can't these folks put an S on the end of atheists? It's like there's only one person that isn't convinced of a god's existence. That wouldn't be a very good gang now, would it?
They get triggered by the Holy Bible and Jesus Christ. They have earned a notorious reputation for bullying small towns and communities that believe we are still one nation under God.
Sounds like a whole load of Christian persecution going on here. This poor guy doesn't like that folks don't agree that a nation not supposed to be under a god, but with under God folks pushing for it to be, are getting some pushback. That's real persecution there.
But it turns out the atheists picked the wrong man to bully in Oklahoma. State School Superintendent Ryan Walters has now filed a lawsuit against the out-of-town atheist, and he joins us live. So what was the final straw for you, Ryan?
Well, thank you for having me on, Todd, and thank you for being a champion for religious liberty and conservative values.
Religious liberty? You mean the liberty that states you have to be a Christian? And Ryan, aren't you the guy that was crying because you wanted to put Bibles in schools and the Oklahoma Supreme Court denied it?
And look, here was my last straw. They literally sent a threatening cease and desist letter to a small Oklahoma school because they do morning announcements, and a boy, one morning, child, decides to say a prayer on the announcements. Like his own fruition, his own freedom to express his religious beliefs. No one told him to. No one told him not to.
Are you sure about that? You think a child decided, I want to pray, but wasn't taught that it was the right thing to do? And if it's a state-funded school, you're not supposed to show any bias towards one religion. Something my wife and I have had to deal with in our hometown.
He just did it. And now they're threatening the kid, the school, everyone involved, the teachers. I mean, it's just outrageous. And we have got to stand up to these radical atheists.
Atheists.
That continue to say there has to be state-sponsored atheism in our schools. The First Amendment doesn't apply in schools. Well, of course it does. There's no magical clause in the Constitution that says all of this is null and void inside a public school. So we're not going to tolerate that here in Oklahoma.
The First Amendment is about not favouring one religion. I wonder how happy Ryan would be if the Satanic Temple came in and gave a prayer, or I went in and bestowed leaves upon everyone.
So Ryan, tell me about the lawsuit. Why exactly are you suing the Freedom from Religion Foundation?
Let me answer this for you, Ryan. Because, wow, they don't think my sky wizard's real and won't let me indoctrinate kids. I mean, teach kids about how Jesus is the wafer puff in the night. Or something. Sorry, Ryan, got carried away. You take it now.
So what they're doing is they're using these legal tactics to bully districts and claim to have jurisdiction where they have none. I mean, there's no reason. They have no standing. They have no legal ability to come in and dictate how students behave inside a classroom. They have no client. They have nothing. All they're trying to do is come in and threaten and continue to bog down districts with legal fees. So we said, listen, we're the ones who set all policies for our schools. We're the ones who set the protections here around the First Amendment in our schools, and we try to make sure that our schools uphold that. And so you got a problem, you can deal with us, but you're not going to come after every little small district in the state of Oklahoma and threaten their freedoms, threaten their rights, threaten the students that attend school there. And so we're telling them you're not going to go into our schools anymore. If you want to deal with somebody, you can deal with us.
Sounds like you don't understand that there are other religions in the world, Rhino. And they have every right to say that in a state-funded school, religion has no place. If you want Bibles in the classroom, get on over to some private schools, you wally.
You see, I love this approach here because, look, I get it. You know, it's America. If you want to be a godless heathen atheist, you can do that under the Constitution. But you don't have to be a jerk. And that's what these people are. They're being jerks to these small towns and communities and bullies.
Yeah, I disagree. Aren't you being a jerk for shoving it in people's faces when there are absolutely perfect private places to do that?
And there's a reason why they go after these really small districts in really rural places, because again, these districts go, so now we're going to have to, bring an attorney on. Now we're going to have to take on legal fees. And that's exactly why they do that, because they are going to bully and intimidate them. And again, we have stood for religious liberty of all of our students, all of our teachers here in Oklahoma. If they got a problem, they can take it up with us, but we are not going to allow them to bully and target children in our smallest rural districts in the state. Never again. Again, they got a problem with religious liberty. They got a problem with the U.S. Constitution. They can take it up with me, and we'll continue to defend the individuals in our state.
How small-minded do you have to be? Around 1 in 4 folks in Oklahoma are religiously unaffiliated. So that may mean atheist or just not religious. Let's be generous and say 1 in 10 are atheist. Even in small schools, that's 1 or 2 kids per class who may find it offensive. Suddenly, they don't matter because your religion has its rights. Pull the other one, Rai.
I'm curious, Ryan, and I'm just very impressed with how you're leading the education system there in Oklahoma. But why are you doing this? Because you're catching a lot of fire nationwide from these radical groups.
Oh, yes. They're definitely pretty angry with me on this. But Todd, we have got to start playing offense as conservatives. I mean, we have sat back and allowed the left to dictate education, indoctrinate our kids, control every aspect of the education system. The teachers' unions bully our teachers.
The left have indoctrinated? The left, who also have a lot of religious folks. And you don't want to indoctrinate, do you? You just want to teach kids about the Bible and how true it is and how it's the only way. And that's totally not indoctrination.
The Federal Department of Education bullied our kids, our parents, our teachers. Thank God for President Donald Trump for getting rid of the Federal Department of Education. And now we've got these atheist legal fees that continue in lawfare against individuals, against citizens to try to bully and intimidate them. And we have got to take a stand and say, no, we are going to unapologetically respect the First Amendment in our schools. We're going to unapologetically bring the Bible back in its historical context.
Historical context? In that it was written a long time ago and folks accept it as truth despite it only claiming the existence of a God. Right?
We're going to make sure that prayer is back in our schools as well. If people want to pray, they can pray.
How very First Amendment of you.
And so it's so essential that we get back to some of our foundational values in this country, and we've got to take on these woke radicals head on.
All right. Look, Ryan, we're going to let you go get them. And if you need any help, just give me a holler.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, thanks, Todd, for pointing out how ridiculous this man is for being in a position of power and getting it completely wrong because his beliefs are greater than any other beliefs. Sheesh. Next.
He said the people of deviance and the people who lie and spread lies about Islam and they claim to be Muslims are worse than the atheists. And it kind of makes sense. Yeah? Because he said the atheists are trying to harm Islam from outside.
Atheists aren't trying to harm Islam. As one, I'm just not convinced that the God of the Quran exists either. Sorry if you think that's harmful to Islam. That one guy who was never a Muslim is still not a Muslim because I'm not convinced of the existence of the Muslim God.
Yeah, throwing their atheist doubts and everything from outside. And the people of bid'ah and the deviants, they're trying to harm and attack Islam from within.
Okay. Wouldn't those folks be atheists too, though? Or are you just saying that there are some folks who misinterpret and get it wrong about the God you also believe in? It comes to something when folks can't agree on an interpretation, but an all-powerful God can't just step in and correct them. It's like that being doesn't exist. Next.
You could call me in the past a little bit of a radicalized Reddit atheist. I had a plan to lay out a conjecture and an outline, a strategy, intellectual problem-solving matrix grid array thing for how to turn the human brain into a, functionally speaking, not truly literally abstractly, because that would be beyond even the scope of this and therefore beyond, hold on. To turn Earth into a planet brain, so turn the human brain into a God brain. God.
Where does he find these videos, I hear you asking? And honestly, I'm not sure what happened here, but whatever this guy is taking sounds like some good shit. Turning the brain into an Earth what now?
And reduce all suffering on Earth by the use of absolute knowledge, benevolent force, so it's loving, but it's not going to play around with you and let you keep nukes pointed at each other. It's going to say, no, bye, let me confiscate all guns and force anyone who hurts you to not be able to hurt you. So you don't need 2A rights, but you can always just shoot guns at trees or whatever, but then that sort of sucks for the tree. Anyway, I'm getting off track. The ultimate version of this was to stratify the planet brain into the sun and then shoot it out through reality and make the fabric of reality the god cosmos, and to ascend humanity, but to preserve humanity so you can still be your mortal self and you'll be loved and kept safe and taken care of.
So you were a Reddit atheist that tried to prove how God was there but didn't want to interfere with what was going on here, or wait, no, he's lost me. This hopefully has a point as to why he's now a believer.
The primary underlying assumption here was that God does not exist. Or if he did, he just created us and left us here. Because I couldn't fully explain the Big Bang.
The Big Bang is nothing to do with gods, though. You cannot believe in a god and still not understand or accept Big Bang Theory, but whatever.
Even as a agnostic, I suppose, and agnostic means I don't know if there's a god, but I would have made a lot of arguments for you that presupposed and would take the same viewpoints, except I just came up with different weird answers. That's why I said I was a radicalized Reddit atheist, because I was on my own cultish path.
Can you be the only member of a cult? I think that's just called being a bit of a loon.
You, and I probably still will be, because I believe that there's value and utility in it, and just in case. I'm crazy, but didn't think there was one. Or if there was, he was evil. I kind of believe that one.
Then you weren't an atheist. You were a theist that thought the God you believed in was a dumbass.
That the universe was a twisted mockery in a game of crushing and ripping and tearing and just suffering. Let me suck up all the suffering.
You would make an excellent boyfriend.
And then I saw Jesus in a trans-dimensional portal.
A trans-dimensional portal? Being that we can only interact in our 3D world that we know of, how on earth would anyone ever accept that explanation?
And other things that were beyond human reckoning, so they were either from another dimension or from a higher form of spiritual location.
You saw something outside of human reckoning, and yet you reckoned it. Then it would either be reckonable or non-existent. Or maybe a drug-induced experience. Place your bets now.
It was really weird because I was seeing things that were outside, then they were in the glass, and then they were in my head. So I saw something interacting with the outside world, and then it got trapped in like a refractory, like prism, which is like what light passes through. And then bro showed up.
And this might be a good reason to lay off heavy substances, kid. Unless you can differentiate between what is and isn't real. Jeez. Next.
Atheists love to say that they do not believe in God. But give it about 5 minutes and they are preaching objective moral ideas like human rights and dignity and the nature of evil, as if these things were written on stone tablets and fell from the sky.
Just because that's how you need to receive your morals, I don't. It's not hard to have a bit of empathy and understanding of what could and couldn't be harmful to others.
They say there's no God, but they argue like he's very, very real.
No, there are arguments because dumbs say that it's real, and I say I don't believe you prove it.
Today, I want to make a simple claim, and then back it up. That atheists, modern atheists, are very dishonest about their belief in God, or lack thereof. They'll reject the idea of God, and then immediately afterwards, when arguing with you, they will speak, and in most cases even act, which is a good thing, like he's very real. And again, that's a good thing. This isn't a gotcha. That's a good thing that they believe that God exists, really.
When theists talk to atheists, they talk as though a God doesn't exist. And that's a good thing, really. It's not a gotcha, it's a good thing. Yeah, that made about as much sense as what you said, Ash.
This is just pointing out their unfair approach to people that admit that they believe in God. You see, the moral language that atheists use about dignity and justice and human rights, these things only exist if there is an objective moral order. And if there is an objective moral order, there has to be something bigger than man to justify that moral order.
Please don't say that there's a moral order before we even touch objective versus subjective God opinions from a made-up being that once, and maybe still does, said that wearing mixed fabrics will get you stoned to death, and buying slaves and giving them to your kids is also okay.
There is a classic philosophical argument for the existence of God called the moral argument for God, and it goes like this. If God does not exist, then objective moral values don't exist. Objective moral values do exist. Therefore, God exists.
Empathy can exist if people cannot be shitty to each other. People cannot be shitty to each other, so empathy exists. And a God's opinion of what isn't shitty, or at least what men think a God's opinion of not being shitty isn't objective. It's the subjective opinion.
Phase 3, profit.
Now, most atheists today do not deny objective morality. They will say that murder is evil. They'll say that there are objective moral wrongs in the world. They don't deny that. But here's the catch. On what basis?
Not being a
If we're just molecules in motion, if morality is just a cultural adaptation, then evil isn't really evil. It's just not preferred and unpopular. But atheists don't talk like that. They speak with absolute moral certainty.
So what? You just saying you're speaking how I think my God thinks we should speak doesn't demonstrate the God.
Listen to an atheist debate long enough and you will eventually hear moral outrage.
Goodbye, jackass. No, sir. No, sir. I'm hanging up on you right now. Nobody gets to speak to you anymore. Wes, you are an embarrassment as a pastor, and how dare you suggest that I, who am sitting here and can give you chapter and verse from your embarrassing book, am misunderstanding or misinterpreting it. You sit around there and you figure out how when it says that if a man lies with another man, they have committed an abomination or deserving of... How can you misinterpret that?
Not intellectual disagreement, not some kind of mild critique, but genuine outrage.
And everyone can agree that things are bad or not good or whatever label you want to put on it, and folks are allowed to be annoyed by things that could eventually harm them or the ones they love.
And that should tell you something. If these morals are subjective, why get so angry? Why act like something is so wrong? Why not just not preferred? Because deep down, most of us admit and accept that morality is real, fixed, objective, and above us. Atheists just don't want to live with the consequences of admitting that.
Hello, atheist here. I'm just not convinced of a God, mate.
If the morality is objective, then so is its source. In philosophy, this is called borrowing capital. It's utilizing tools from a worldview that you claim to reject. For example, most atheists reject Christianity, but they accept the moral framework it has given to the Western world.
Oh, right, yeah. I love owning all my slaves and beating them too and killing children with bears because they said something about my hairline.
Love your neighbor, protect the weak, every person has inherent dignity. These ideas don't come from evolution. They come from the book of Genesis, from the idea that human beings are all created in the image of God.
Read your Bible as interpreted by experts.
You can deny God if you want, but then Why impose his values on the world?
What if those values already existed and the folks that wrote the Bible took them and said, God said it?
That's not science. That's spiritual plagiarism, if you will.
You said it.
And here's the problem with the common atheist claim that they only value science and scientific evidence. Science can only tell you what is. It can't tell you what ought to be.
What ought to be is some verifiable evidence that the God you speak of exists, but alas, there is not.
Science can't make ought claims. If the world is simply a cold, meaningless, and brutal place, then all science can do is explain a cold, brutal, and meaningless world.
Someone has never had a holiday or vacation near the equator or experienced Kentucky in August.
For example, evolution can explain how we got here, but it can't explain why evil things are evil.
No, evolution explains the diversity of life. Abiogenesis explains how we got here.
It can only say that it's maladaptive, and maladaptive isn't evil. If you want to say that something is truly wrong, not just an inconvenience for the species, you need a law above nature. And that's the realm of metaphysics and ethics. That's God's territory. That's outside of what science can do.
Let's say you're right, that it's not basic human understanding and it's attributed to something else. You're making a big jump for it to be the God you just so happen to be taught to believe in.
And even Friedrich Nietzsche, who was no Christian, knew this very well. Atheists love to quote Nietzsche, God is dead, but then they don't quote the rest of the passage. That he said that God is dead and we have killed him, and then he went on a tirade to explain how that will lead to moral corruption and nihilism.
Don't believe in a God here, also not a nihilist, nor do I do anything, as far as I'm aware, that goes against the well-being of my loved ones.
He predicted the moral chaos of the 20th century because he saw that people wanted God's values but didn't want God. And he called it what it is, hypocrisy and cowardice. So why does this all matter for the atheist? Because civilization runs and operates on moral consistency. If we're going to have a world of rights, dignity, and justice, we have to ground those values in something objective and true.
And can that change as we progress as a global society? Things could be very different in a few hundred years, and folks might look at some of the things we do today that we feel are helpful and say, well, that was shitty. An unchanging word of a God doesn't have that luxury.
And eternal. Otherwise, those are just opinions and preferences, and opinions and preferences can change and be overruled. You can't have justice without the judge, and you cannot have values without the value giver.
Well, thank goodness we have, for the most part, folks in positions that make judgments on society that are treated empathetically and not with the undemonstrated spoken word of a sky fairy.
So maybe the real question isn't whether or not atheists believe in God. Maybe the real question is, how long can they pretend that they don't while praying every day that he does?
And this guy doesn't know any atheists, because I guarantee that doesn't happen. The desperation for atheists to really believe in a God is disturbing. Really.
The tension can't hold forever. You either ground morality in God, or you surrender morality to the winds of preference and power. So choose wisely.
Or choose to just use your brain and not be an arsehole. That's really not that difficult, Ash. Next.
God is so proud of you. You have no idea. He loves you so much because you never gave up on him. And you never turned mean after all that you went through. You've become the living proof of God's existence. People can look to you and say, God definitely exists.
Lisa the rainbow giraffe, leave be upon her, is proud of you. You have no idea. She loves you so much because you never gave up on her and you never turned mean after all that you went through. You've become the living proof of Lisa the rainbow giraffe, leave be upon her's existence. People can look to you and say, Lisa the rainbow giraffe, leave be upon her, definitely exists. And that, my friend, is how to prove the existence of the cosmic rainbow deity. Well, if it works for this guy, it should work for you too. I guess we should get used to the disappointment of no gods ever being proven whenever I go through these videos. It's always, atheists do really believe in gods, they just don't admit it. Or they live the same way that we do and we believe in a god, so they have to explain why. I really wish these folks would just ask a question or two to an actual atheist. They might stop misrepresenting what atheism is and actually learn something. Did anything jump out to you here? And are you suddenly convinced that gods exist? Let me know in the section below. I'm going to skeptic this as another bunch of stupidity that we never have to look at again. A big thank you to this month's top level ticks on Patreon. Dark Ether Piao, Tamo, The Barely Bearable Atheist, George, Godless Granny, Addy Rockart, The Enixes, Jakari, Elizabeth, Whiskey Tech Fred, Rick and Stylistic Matthew, as well as all the $3 base ticks and new channel members. You can become a supporter on Patreon too at patreon.com/theskeptic. The link is in the description, along with links to all my other socials, or become a member by hitting the join button below this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. From me, the Skeptic, stay safe, keep thinking logically, and ask questions. Skepticism is the first step towards truth. See you next Saturday.